Perfect. Thank you very much, all of you. Thank you, Paul, for your kind introduction. I want to start with a quick word of appreciation for all the first responders across the province who are helping to battle the hundreds of wildfires now raging in BC. It's nice that the rain has started again. That's actually good news. But your province needs all of these first responders, and thank you for stepping up. Thank you for all that everyone who keeps us safe does every day. And thank you also, all of you, but especially to Matt and Rob and the entire Richmond Chamber of Commerce for inviting me here to share a few thoughts with you today. This is my 15th visit to BC since becoming leader of the Liberal Party a few years ago. I'm always happy to be back, especially with my wife Sophie and 3 kids who couldn't join us on this trip, because this is really like coming home for me. This is, after all, the place my own great-grandparents immigrated to as young people. The son they brought with them, my grandfather, Jimmy, grew up here. And like so many newcomers, he went on to take full advantage of all the opportunities Canada afforded. My grandparents' home up on the North Shore was a fixture of my childhood. But from stepping out of the airport after a long flight to the unmistakable scent of the cedar logs on the Fraser River, to stopping in for fish and chips at Steveston Wharf, I have incredibly fond memories, not just of all the Lower Mainland, but of Richmond as well. So when I had the chance as an adult to choose where I wanted to move, to live, to work, to grow, there was no question of where I'd go. I wanted to come back to BC. It's always been and always will be my second home. And it's because BC means so much to me that I'm so excited about the team we're building here in Richmond, across the Lower Mainland, and beyond. I'm talking about experienced leaders like Joyce Murray, who's here today, who's been a cabinet minister in BC and continues to lead as Vancouver Quadra's great MP, and Hetty Fried, who's our health critic, who's served the people of Vancouver Centre for more than 20 years. There's also a great team of folks who are new to politics, entrepreneurs and community advocates like Lawrence Wu, running right here in Richmond Centre. Where are you, Lawrence? Stand up so people can get to... Now, our great Liberal candidates come from many different backgrounds, but they have one thing in common. They want to make sure that you have a stronger voice in Ottawa than you've had for the past 10 years. They want a government that cares about things that matter to Canadians. And that's what I'd like to talk about this afternoon. Today, Canada is one of the most diverse and dynamic countries in the world. It's a country that works well because of this. Canadians believe and understand that no matter who you are or where you're from, you ought to have a real and fair chance at a successful life. That sense of fairness is what built our country from its earliest days. It's what built our reputation abroad, and it's what built our thriving middle class. Le Canada est aujourd'hui l'un des pays les plus diversifiés et les plus dynamiques du monde. C'est un pays qui fonctionne, et il fonctionne bien pour la raison suivante. Les Canadiennes et Canadiens savent que peu importe qui vous êtes ou d'où vous venez, vous méritez une chance réelle de réussir. Ce concept d'équité est le fondement de notre pays. Il a forgé notre réputation à l'étranger et il a donné naissance à notre classe moyenne. For a long time, Canada's middle class fared pretty well. When our economy was strong and growing, it generated the kind of good, well-paying jobs that made it possible for Canadians to build better lives for themselves and their kids. But today, our middle class, the heart of the economy, is struggling. The middle class in Canada continues to work hard, but is finding it tougher and tougher to get by. Over the past 30 years, Canadian families have seen their income stagnate, their costs go up, and their debts explode. Here are a few numbers that, unfortunately, help paint that picture. According to TD Bank, an alarming and increasing number of Canadians are, quote, precariously employed. They work in temporary jobs, are self-employed, or are working part-time but still looking for full-time work. People in these jobs typically earn between $12,000 and $18,000 less per year compared to those in stable, full-time jobs. CIBC estimates that the average 35-year-old Canadian now puts aside less than half of what their parents did at that same age, and the income gap between older and younger Canadians is growing. It doesn't help that too many young people are graduating from school but can't find good jobs. And sadly, many older Canadians are struggling too. An estimated 1/3 of Canadians nearing retirement age say they have no retirement savings at all. This at a time where Mr. Harper has pushed up the age of eligibility for old age security and the guaranteed income supplement. Of course, some Canadians are doing very well, including a number of you here today. You're business leaders, entrepreneurs. You've worked hard and you've seen that hard work pay off, as it should. The fact is, nearly every person in this room can trace their history in this country back to someone who came here seeking a better life and greater opportunity. It was that promise of opportunity that made Canada so attractive. And until very recently, it was our ability to deliver on that promise that made our country great. But over 10 years of Mr. Harper's rule, those opportunities have dwindled. Not by accident, but possibly by design. Income splitting is a perfect example. With income splitting, Mr. Harper has created a $2 billion tax break that favors the wealthy. Even though every Canadian will be paying for it, just 15% of Canadians will see any kind of benefit at all. I don't think that's fair, and I don't think it brings us any closer to recapturing the kind of strong, resilient economy that we've been losing under Mr. Harper's watch. But the topic of income splitting brings me to the point I'd like to address in terms of one myth about the Liberal Party position. You've probably seen, actually I'm pretty sure you've all seen, the ad with the older gentleman who is worried that we'll shut down income splitting for seniors. That is false. I told the Prime Minister in the House of Commons, and I made a clear and solemn commitment to Canadians months ago that I will always stand by. A Liberal government will not eliminate income splitting for seniors. But Mr. Harper, well, he prefers the politics of fear and division than actually respecting the truth. But back to our economy. As business people, I don't think anyone in this room will be surprised when, in a few months, the government is forced to admit that Canada is in the midst of a recession. We already know that despite the Finance Minister's feeble assurances, that we're looking at a $1 billion deficit this year. The real question is, what are we going to do about it? The Conservatives are offering more of the same failed plan. And the NDP, well, they're serving up deliberately misleading ideas, hoping that Canadians won't notice. The Liberal plan, however, is clear. We will give middle-class families meaningful tax relief, to give families the help they need to get by, and to help our entire economy get back on more solid ground. Parce que la vraie question demeure, qu'est-ce que les libéraux vont faire? Si vous regardez les conservateurs, c'est du pareil au même. Et si vous regardez le NPD, à part le fait qu'ils veulent hausser le taux d'imposition des entreprises, on ne sait pas trop ce qu'ils ont à offrir. C'est en grande partie un mystère. C'est simple. Le plan de M. Harper est un échec et M. Mulcair n'a pas de plan. Le plan libéral, quant à lui, est clair. Nous accorderons aux Canadiennes et Canadiens de la classe moyenne de véritables allègements fiscaux. Nous donnerons aux familles l'aide dont elles ont besoin pour joindre les deux bouts et pour aider notre économie à repartir sur des bases plus solides. There are three specific proposals that will help us get there. First, we will bring in a new child benefit that will deliver the meaningful monthly payments to help families with the costs of raising their children. Unlike Mr. Harper's program, it's non-taxable. You won't get a bill next April demanding a chunk of the money back. Instead, our plan gives more to those who need it most, up to $533 a month per child. Our plan will lift 315,000 kids out of poverty. Mr. Harper's plan which for some reason Mr. Mulcair endorses, will continue to send checks to millionaires. Our second proposal is to cut the middle-class tax rate by 7%, down to 20.5% from 22%. That represents a $3 billion tax break for middle-income earners. It's targeted tax relief that makes sense. Of course, the money has to come from somewhere, which brings me to our third proposal. We will introduce a new tax bracket of 33% for those incomes in excess of $200,000. Those Canadians who are doing very well, in the 1% of all Canadians, and can afford to do just a little bit more. Now, why not raise taxes on corporations, as Mr. Mulcair plans to do? The reason is simple. At the heart of job creation and economic growth is investment. I believe in a business culture that encourages and rewards investment and growth. If we raise corporate income tax rates, we risk losing out on investment, leading to even weaker growth than we've seen right now. Rather than risking the overall health of Canada's already fragile economy, we're turning to Canada's most successful citizens, people like you. And we're asking you to give a little bit more to help build a better Canada for all Canadians. Because it's not just about redistribution. Because when our middle class has more money in their pockets to save, invest, and grow the economy, we all benefit. And of course, the opposite is also true. If we do nothing to help the middle class, if we allow them to slip further down the ladder of opportunity, our economy will suffer and the negative effects will be felt by all. Of course, these steps are not the only ones we need to take. There are several other areas that need attention too. First, education, training, research and development. We know that smart investments in these areas go a long way in ensuring that we have a talented workforce that is ready to fill positions. That's especially true here in British Columbia, where you're forecast to add more than 1 million jobs to the economy over the next 7 years. Second, we need a real plan for infrastructure investment. What Mr. Harper is offering is much too little, much too late. Projects like Surrey Light Rail, to say nothing of the broader public transit, transportation, and affordable housing and other critical infrastructure needs here in the region, simply can't happen without greater federal support. And more than that, they won't happen until cities like Richmond and provinces like BC have real partners in Ottawa, the kind of respectful and productive relationship that has been missing for 10 long years. Third, we need to do more to encourage investment in clean technology. When I was in Burnaby at the end of June, I had a chance to tour General Fusion, which is working hard to develop technology that could reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. I know that Richmond has its own success stories too, in Corvus Energy and Harvest Power. These companies represent the kind of innovation that we should be championing. And fourth, we need to make attracting greater foreign direct investment and trade a real priority, especially here in BC. As I told the Vancouver Board of Trade last year, this province quite literally faces the future of the Canadian economy. The U.S. will always be an important trading partner, but the present and future of global growth is in Asia. We need smart trade policy to make sure that BC businesses, the businesses across Canada, are able to make the most of those opportunities. Now, as you know, in just a few months, Canadians will be at the polls choosing the government that will lead us for the next 4 years. And as you look forward to that important decision, I hope you'll think critically about Mr. Harper's record and about Mr. Mulcair's promises. Because this election is about more than the decade that has just passed. It's about the years that lie ahead, the opportunities we want for ourselves, for our kids, and for our grandkids. Un gouvernement libéral agira différemment. Nous offrirons plus à ceux qui en ont réellement besoin et moins à ceux qui n'en ont pas besoin. Nous mettrons au cœur de nos priorités celles et ceux qui sont le véritable moteur de l'économie canadienne, les gens de la classe moyenne. A liberal government would do things differently. We'll offer more help to those who need it most and less to those who don't. We'll put the focus back on those who are the true heart of Canada's economy, our middle class. And we'll do it not because it's the political convenient thing to do, but because it's the right thing to do, the fair thing to do. That's the kind of leadership that Canadians and Canada deserve. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Now, as has become my habit and my a demonstration of what politics is supposed to be about, which really is not just about politicians giving speeches to people who nod sagely and then being whisked out the back. It's about actually engaging. It's about having a conversation. It's about making sure the Canadians' concerns are heard and that politicians get to answer concerns, questions, clarify, defend positions and decisions we take. Because in the 21st century, that active connection between citizens and government is not just something that restores trust in our governments and institutions. It's actually something that ensures that we're making better decisions, that we are taking into account all voices within Canada. And it's one of those reasons that the politics of attack and division are so limited when it comes to actually governing this country responsibly. So I thank you all for being here today, and I look forward to taking any of your questions. Who has any questions for me? I know we have some written down because some people wrote at the tables, but if someone wants to stand up or put up their hand. You know what? I'm going to go to your worship. Malcolm, Mayor of Richmond, Malcolm Brody, please take it away. It'll be on. They just turned it on.
Mr. Trudeau, thank you very much for being here and enlightening us as to your position. It's going to be a very interesting next few months, and we're going to look forward to hearing more about your position as the time goes along. My question is, I think it's one of the questions uppermost in the minds of Canadian citizens, and that's about the Senate. My understanding from reading the media is that your position is quite distinct from the NDP or the Conservative position. Could we hear more about that? And as a sub-question of that, do you see value in the Senate as it is now? Do you see value in the Senate as it may become?
Well, thank you very much. I don't know. Of all the conversations I've had across the country, a number of people are worried about the state of our democracy and how Mr. Harper has mishandled the Senate as a place for patronage and political favoritism. But what is top of mind right now for Canadians is the economy. Is the stalled economy. And the fact that Mr. Harper is looking like he might be talking about the Senate today is just a desire to distract from the very real concerns that everyone has about the challenges facing the Canadian economy. But to put it very simply, Mr. Harper has been promising for decades now that he was going to do something real about the Senate, and it was needed to be changed, it needed to be transformed, it needed to be improved. And then he's done exactly nothing but appoint dozens upon dozens, over 50 senators, including 2 of them twice after they became failed candidates, and increase the cynicism that people have about the Senate across the country. So his desire to clean up the Senate is only for political gain, and he's not actually taking action on it. Mr. Mulcair promises a fairy tale of abolishing the Senate, but of course we know that that requires constitutional negotiations, and I don't know any Canadians who are clamoring, yes, you know what, the federal government and the provinces should really sit down and get bogged down once again in acrimonious constitutional negotiations. The Liberal Party is the only party that has actually taken action on Senate reform. We removed all senators from the Liberal caucus so that senators can be truly independent of the political machinations of trying to get a political party elected to form government. And I've committed to appoint senators only through an open, transparent, nonpartisan process that will mean that they will stand up for the voices of their communities, of their regions, and stand up for their own expertise and for Canada, and not simply be mouthpieces under the thumb of the Prime Minister. That's how we restore confidence in our institutions, and that's how we make sure that we're actually having a quality of review of legislation and in-depth studies that ideally the Senate is well suited to do. If it cleans up its act, if it continues to have the kind of accountability and transparency that the Liberal Party has been pushing for years and that we need to have. So thank you very much for your question, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Mr. Trudeau, one of the things that has been around in the news for many years right now is the affordability issue of housing for many of our citizens all across Canada. At one time, the federal government used to be a partner in helping to provide affordable housing through the housing co-op program and also through the development of multiple unit residential developments. Is the Liberal government considering coming back and to being a partner with the cities and the provinces across the nation to once again provide those types of housing for our citizens?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. For 10 years, despite the fact that the federal government has a much greater fiscal capacity and fiscal room than provinces and particularly municipalities who deliver 60% of services to citizens on about 8 to 12% of the tax revenues, the federal government has distanced itself, pulled out of housing. Whether it's washing their hands of the fact that so many of the co-ops over the next years will be losing their federal fundings, or whether it's just the need to have the money to invest in new infrastructure, whether it's low-income housing or retirement homes for seniors, we need a federal government that is once again a partner to the provinces and to municipalities in responding to the very, very real needs that Canadians are facing. The fact is, people still look at housing as a problem, when, as my dear friend and MP Adam Vaughan from Toronto keeps pointing out, housing isn't a problem, it's a solution to problems. And that's where the federal government needs to stop pointing fingers, because ultimately, regardless of the level of government you're talking about, we're all supposed to be serving the same citizens, and it's about time the federal government stepped up and did its share to keep Canadians safely housed. Thank you. Another question. Yes, you, sir. It's always a pleasure.
Downloading from the federal government on the aspects of shirking the responsibilities of the thing. That Fraser River, as is important to the economic viability of the West as the St. Lawrence Seaway is to the east. And I'd like your comments on that, sir.
Absolutely. I know the Fraser River well from having lived here many years, and I've seen the numbers. In the coming decades, the Fraser River's amount of economic activity will easily rival that of the St. Lawrence Seaway in many ways. So it's certainly something that is of a concern not just to the West, but to all of Canada. And the federal government has a responsibility, whether it's around dredging and being a true partner to provinces and municipalities on making sure that it's happening. And I see the Port of Metro Vancouver smiling at me on that one. Or whether it's quite simply on accepting and understanding the importance of the recommendations in the Cohen Report on restoring salmon stocks. We have an extraordinary opportunity here, but we need to understand that the federal government has to step up to do its share. And unfortunately, that hasn't been what has characterized this government. And on top of that, we have a government that continues to try and pretend that you have to make a choice between what's good for the economy and what's good for the environment. All of us here in BC know full well that the only way to build a strong economy for the future is to make sure that we are upholding and protecting our environments at the same time. And that is something that the Liberal Party deeply understands and is committing to doing, both around the Fraser River and in all aspects of growing our economy the right way. Thank you very much, sir. I have a question here from someone who gave one in, and because there's some people actually filled out the papers on your desks there, on your tables. So I'll take this one, and then I'll come right to you afterwards, ma'am. The question is, it's a question about coalition with the NDP. If Harper won a minority government, would we work with the NDP to protect the environment and make sure that Canada got a better government? The question's from Ian McLean. Thank you very much, Ian, for your question. It's one that a lot of people who are terribly distressed about 10 years of Stephen Harper's government are really worried about. We've seen vote splits in the past. We've seen how Mr. Harper has managed to sneak through, and people are very worried about what the further impact of more years of Harper government could have on Canada's economy and on Canadians' well-being. Well, the fact is, after 10 years of a government that had its priorities in the wrong place, we don't just need a different government, we need a better government. And that comes by having a coherent plan and an extraordinary team to implement that plan. There are far too many fundamental elements on which we Liberals deeply disagree with the NDP on. Whether it's their approach to international trade and foreign investment, whether it's their approach on making it easier for Canada to be divided, and their disagreement with the Supreme Court on the Clarity Act, or whether it's their desire to hike taxes on corporations at a time where we need investment and business success. There are many things that need a coherent, cohesive plan for this country, and I don't think that reducing options at the ballot box or working behind the scenes to try and trick Canadians into, gaining power is what Canadians want to see, particularly at this time of cynicism around politics. The Liberal Party is opposed to any formal agreement with the NDP. We are presenting a responsible, complete plan to grow our economy, to bring fairness back for Canadians, and create once again the kind of Canada we all deserve. And I have extraordinary faith in Canadians' decisions in the coming months to get that decision right. Thank you very much. Merci.
Yes, the election is only 3 months away, and we have 2 ridings in Richmond, but we only have 1 candidate selected for the Liberals. When can we expect to have a candidate for the Steveston-Richmond East riding, which is a new riding?
I promise you we will have a candidate by October 19th. One of the things that I have committed to is open nominations. And there's been a lot of questions about what open nominations actually mean. And at the heart of it, what it means is local Liberals all across the country got to choose who would be their voice in Ottawa. Because one of the things we've seen across our country over the past years is that MPs have become their Prime Minister's spokesperson in Ottawa. They've become their Prime Minister's spokesperson in their community rather than being their community's spokesperson to Ottawa, particularly within the Conservative Party. And the Liberal Party, as you all know, has gone through some tough elections over the past few electoral cycles, which means that we needed to re-engage at a very grassroots level with the folks who believe in this party and trust those people to make the right decisions about who will represent them. However, at the same time, there is a balance. Not everyone can qualify as a Liberal Party candidate. If you have a criminal record, if you're not aligned with our values, if there are challenges around what you say versus what you've actually done. I mean, we have a process whereby our candidates are evaluated so that anyone who stands in a contest to be the Liberal candidate actually is worthy of being a Liberal candidate. And that process sometimes takes a little longer than we'd expect. So I can guarantee you that as that process unfolds, we are taking it very, very seriously and making sure that every single riding across the country has the best possible candidate to be your voice in Ottawa and not just Ottawa's voice in your riding. So it'll be coming soon. Thank you. Another question? Yes, you in the back. Go ahead, Donald. Oh, sorry, you got the mic over there, but we'll go with, I believe it's Donald in the back. Oh, sorry, Donald, right beside you. Yeah, that's okay. We're getting to you with the mic.
Umpasatani, father of Sablefish, father of all women, Raven Tribe, Kanhata, expressing appreciation for the privilege of gathering in these ancestral lands. I had crafted a question on this provided card, but essentially that question has already been asked. Here's another question from me. With regard to our Indigenous people all across this wondrous land, justly envied by hundreds of millions, if not billions, of our fellow human beings all over the globe. My friend Iona Campanola, who is, of course, a wonderful federal Liberal earlier in her life, likes to speak about orders of government as opposed to levels of government. So my question is, with regard to both iterations of the Crown, provincial and federal, but most particularly federal, as Prime Minister of Canada, how would you see relationships mutually respectful and beneficial between both iterations of the Crown and municipal, in terms of iterations of the Crown, particularly federal, and our indigenous governmental structures across the country? Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for your question. And the relationship we have with Indigenous peoples, First Nation, Métis Nation, and Inuit, has been seriously strained over the past 10 years, but challenged over generations and even centuries. It is time we went back to both the spirit and intent of the original treaty relationship. It's time we understood the impact of the Royal Proclamation of 250 years ago that still applies today. It's time we engaged on a nation-to-nation basis to have a true partnership for all who share this land. That means making sure that our First Nations brothers and sisters across this country have the same kinds of opportunities, the same kinds of rights, the same kind of respect that we give to each other. And unfortunately, when it comes to education, when it comes to health care, this federal government, or federal government successively, has failed. There were bright spots in the Kelowna Accord of 10 years ago that represented an opportunity to sit down and work together to build capacity in meaningful, real ways that was come together through direct, respectful negotiations. Unfortunately, it was canceled by the current government. But the fact is, we need to once again engage in the kind of respectful relationship that Canadians across the country are asking for, that Indigenous peoples have been asking for a long time, and that now even the Supreme Court recognizes we need to engage in as a country. I'm extremely proud to have a number of very, very strong Indigenous voices from across this country, from Carly Scott to Jody Wilson-Raybould to many, many others right across this land, who will be part of building a true, better relationship, so that when we talk about how we walk forward all together. I am committed to bringing in an immediate national public inquiry into the tragedy of the missing and murdered Aboriginal women. I am committed to implementing and working hard to implement with partners all of the recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We have a lot of work together, but I am constantly inspired by the caliber of leadership and the optimism and passion that I see from every Canadian I meet who wants to address these issues. And I know that we have solved greater challenges in the past, and this is one that we will solve the way we always do, together. Thank you very much for your question.
Yes, hi, Mr. Trudeau. As a board member of the Richmond Chamber, thank you again for accepting the invitation to come here. As a lawyer, I have an immigration question, and it's based on 2 points that you raised earlier today. You mentioned that all of our beginnings start with someone who came here to Canada, or most of us, and secondly, you mentioned that there is a need to foster more international trade and development. My questions relate to 2 of the current federal immigration programs. One is the startup visa, and the other one is the investor immigrant venture capital program. Both programs have not been as popular as expected. The application numbers are, under a couple dozen for people from around the world. So my question is, what is the Liberal position on such programs, and more broadly, what is the Liberal position on bringing international high net worth investors to Canada who may or may not want permanent residency status, but is there a plan with the Liberal government to do that, or Liberal Party? Thank you.
Thank you, Phoebe, for your question. The challenge that we have right now is we have a government that has not done a very good job on any aspects of immigration. Whether it's their incredibly long wait times on family reunification, their refusals on visas and visitor visas, whether it's their complete mismanagement of the temporary foreign workers file, or their failed attempts to draw in investor immigrants in the right numbers and in the right way. We have a government that hasn't done a very good job at all on immigration. At a time where Canada needs to be drawing in people from around the world to continue to grow our workforce, to create opportunities, to create jobs, and mostly to become Canadians. That pathway to citizenship has always been at the center of Canada's success. The fact that regardless of your background, your ethnicity, your language, your religion, your story, once you became a Canadian citizen, you got to be a full Canadian citizen. And we have become this one country in the world that is strong, not in spite of our differences, but because of those differences. Because instead of defining ourselves by a certain surface attribute, language, religion, culture, ethnicity, we define ourselves through shared values. Values of openness, respect, compassion, a willingness to work hard, a desire to be there for each other, a search for equality, for opportunity, for justice. These are the things that when you come to this country, you get defined as a Canadian because you support. And that is extraordinarily important in a world where constantly divisions and differences are a source of tension, and conflict. We need to continue to draw in a broad range of people from around the world with different strengths, different attributes, so that they can contribute to building Canada into the best possible country. We continue to face many challenges, but we also have extraordinary opportunities. And making sure that as a government, Canada is focused on creating those opportunities, creating that success, drawing in people from around the world, both so they can build the success here, but create even better and closer ties with countries around the world. That's what has continued to make this country strong and great through the past centuries. And that's what we continue to need to work on. And that's why the Liberal Party is committed to improving our immigration system in all its aspects. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Trudeau. And unfortunately, this will be the last question, so I hope I can do the room justice and make it a good one. President Obama in the United States did a tremendous job engaging a group of youth voters that traditionally didn't come out and vote. Historically in Canada, that hasn't happened in a long time. What do you intend to do to reach that voter base? And I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Thank you very much, Rob, for that question, and thank you also for being the chair of this great Richmond Chamber of Commerce that has invited me out to share with you today. Obviously, how we engage young people is very important to me, not just because I was a teacher for many years here in Vancouver, because I have young children of my own who I definitely want to empower and have be the best possible citizens that they can be. But because I understand that the challenges we're facing cannot be solved at the same level of thinking that created them, to quote Einstein. We need to make sure we are drawing in a broad range of solutions and disruptive elements, as entrepreneur speak talks about it now, to challenge ourselves and to solve the issues that we're facing. Now, one of the bad raps that young people get these days is being disconnected and apathetic and disengaged. Well, they may be in regards to formal politics, but we have never had a generation of young people more interested in their communities, more active around the big causes that matter to them, more concerned about the fate of our entire planet, and more able to step up and do something about it than we have right now. It's just in the current incredibly cynical climate around politics, young people don't feel that getting involved in politics or even voting is a particularly meaningful way of making a difference in the world. And that's what the Liberal Party is focused on changing. That's why our refusal to engage in negative, divisive advertising is not just a idealistic choice, it's a very practical one. Because we do not want to encourage the kind of cynicism and disengagement that is so easy when all you ever see is people attacking each other on a personal level. Young Canadians, but all Canadians, don't want to just vote against what they don't like, want to vote for a vision of this country that will once again bring people together and solve the very real challenges we're facing. And our capacity to do that requires us to be better than the finger pointing and the name calling. And I am incredibly encouraged by the conversations I have with young people about getting them involved, drawing them in, bringing forward their solutions, and highlighting that the voices that young people wield in this coming election will determine not just the outcome of this election, but the kind of future we choose for Canada come October 19th. And I look forward to that day. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Thank you very, very much.